What happens when one of Britain's most respected daytime television hosts comes face to face with a guest who refuses to play by the rules? You won't believe what unfolds when Ruth Langsford sits down with Meghan Markle in what was supposed to be a straightforward interview, only to witness the most explosive confrontation in loose women history. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below because you're not going to believe what unfolds. Last night's episode of Loose Women started like any other, with Ruth Langsford settling into her chair across from what appeared to be a composed Meghan Markle. The studio audience was buzzing with excitement, cameras rolling, and the atmosphere seemingly perfect for what everyone expected would be an engaging discussion. But within minutes, the tension in that ITV studio became so thick you could cut it with a knife. Ruth, known for her professionalism and no-nonsense approach, had clearly done her homework. She'd prepared questions that were fair but direct, the kind that had made her a household name across Britain. Meghan, meanwhile, sat with that familiar smile we've all seen countless times, but there was something different about her demeanor tonight, something that suggested she hadn't come here to play nice. "Meghan, thank you for joining us tonight," Ruth began, her voice warm but with an undertone that seasoned viewers would recognize as cautious. "I know our audience is particularly interested in hearing your thoughts on recent developments regarding your ongoing legal battles with various British media outlets." The question hung in the air for a moment longer than it should have. Meghan's smile flickered, just barely, but enough for the cameras to catch it. "Well, Ruth," she replied, her American accent cutting through the studio's atmosphere, "I think it's interesting that you'd start with that particular angle. It really shows where the priorities lie, doesn't it?" Ruth's eyebrows raised slightly. After decades in television, she could sense when an interview was about to take an unexpected turn. "I'm not sure I follow. We're simply asking about matters that are in the public domain and that our viewers are genuinely curious about." "Are they genuinely curious? Or are they being fed a narrative?" Meghan shot back, her tone shifting from pleasant to pointed in the space of a heartbeat. "Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like certain segments of British media, and apparently daytime television, are more interested in perpetuating stories than actually seeking truth." The studio fell into an uncomfortable silence. Ruth, to her credit, maintained her composure, but those who knew her well could see the slight tightening around her eyes. "Meghan, I think you might be misunderstanding the nature of what we do here. We ask questions that reflect public interest, and we do so fairly and without prejudice." "Without prejudice?" Meghan laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Ruth, with all due respect, that's absolute bullshit, and we both know it." The collective gasp from the studio audience was audible. Ruth's co-panelists shifted uncomfortably in their seats, unsure whether to intervene or let their veteran host handle what was rapidly becoming a hostile situation. The camera operators, following their training, kept rolling, capturing every moment of what was unfolding. Ruth's voice remained steady, but there was steel in it now. "I'm going to stop you right there, Meghan. We maintain certain standards on this program, and I'd appreciate it if you could respect that. Now, if you'd like to clarify what you meant by that comment, I'm happy to listen." "What I meant," Meghan said, leaning forward slightly, "is that you people have been peddling the same tired narratives about me and my family for years now. You invite me on here under the pretense of giving me a platform to speak, but really, you just want to ask the same loaded questions that fit your predetermined storylines." Ruth felt her patience beginning to thin. "Meghan, that's simply not accurate. We've been more than fair in our coverage, and frankly, I find your characterization of our intentions to be both unfair and unprofessional." "Unprofessional?" Meghan's voice rose slightly. "You want to talk about unprofessional? How about the way your network has consistently portrayed me compared to other members of the royal family? How about the double standards? How about the fact that you're sitting there right now, probably thinking about how you can spin this conversation to make me look like the difficult one?" The tension in the studio was now palpable. Ruth's co-panelists were exchanging glances, clearly unsure how to navigate what was becoming an increasingly volatile situation. The audience, initially excited to witness what they thought would be a routine celebrity interview, now found themselves in the middle of something far more intense and uncomfortable. Ruth took a deep breath, drawing on every ounce of her professional experience. Meghan, I think we need to take a step back here. You're making some very serious accusations about our integrity and our motives, and I have to say, I find them both hurtful and inaccurate. We invited you here in good faith. Good faith? Meghan practically spat the words. Ruth, please don't insult my intelligence. You invited me here because you knew it would be good for ratings. You're probably hoping for exactly this kind of moment, so you can have something juicy to talk about for the next week. The accusation hit its mark. Ruth's composure, maintained through decades of live television, finally showed its first real crack. That is absolutely not true. And I resent the implication. We are serious journalists here, not tabloid sensationalists. Serious journalists? Meghan laughed again, this time with genuine disdain. Ruth, you work for the same network that has spent years tearing me down. You can dress it up however you want, but at the end of the day, you're part of the same machine that has made my life hell. Ruth's jaw tightened visibly. Meghan, I think you need to be very careful about the accusations you're making here. We have always maintained the highest standards of journalism, and to suggest otherwise is not only wrong, it's defamatory. Defamatory? Meghan stood up slightly in her chair, her voice rising. You want to talk about defamatory? How about we talk about some of the stories your network has run about me? How about we discuss the anonymous sources and the twisted narratives? The atmosphere in the studio had shifted completely. What had started as a routine interview had devolved into something approaching a verbal war zone. Ruth's other panelists were now openly uncomfortable, and the production team behind the cameras could be seen frantically trying to figure out how to handle the situation. Ruth, her voice now carrying an edge that her regular viewers rarely heard, responded, Meghan, if you have specific complaints about our coverage, there are proper channels for addressing those concerns. But coming on this program and making these kinds of wild accusations is neither appropriate nor productive. But Meghan was far from finished, and what happened next would push this confrontation past the point of no return. You know what, Ruth? Meghan said, her voice dripping with contempt as she leaned back in her chair like she owned the place. Let's talk about proper channels. Let's talk about how I've tried to address these issues through proper channels for years, and how absolutely nothing has changed. So maybe it's time to have this conversation publicly, don't you think? Ruth's knuckles were white as she gripped her interview cards. Meghan, I understand you may have grievances, but this is neither the time nor the place to air them in this manner. Our viewers tuned in expecting a civilized discussion. Civilized? Meghan's voice rose to a level that made everyone in the studio flinch. There's nothing fucking civilized about the way your industry has treated me and my family. Nothing civilized about the racist undertones in your coverage. Nothing civilized about the way you've systematically destroyed my reputation while building up others who've done far worse. The studio erupted in shocked murmurs. Ruth's face flushed red, not from embarrassment, but from pure anger. That is completely out of line, Meghan. You cannot come onto this program and make those kinds of accusations without any evidence whatsoever. Evidence? Meghan practically shrieked. Ruth, the evidence is everywhere. It's in every headline, every photograph you choose to publish, every expert you bring on to analyze my every move. The evidence is sitting right in front of me in the form of someone who pretends to be impartial while being part of the exact system I'm talking about. Ruth stood up, something she had never done in 20 years of conducting interviews. Right, that's enough. You are completely out of order. You cannot sit there and accuse me personally of racism and bias when you know absolutely nothing about me or my values. I know enough. Meghan shot back, also rising from her chair. I know that you work for people who have made it their mission to destroy me. I know that you're probably getting paid handsomely to sit there and ask me gotcha questions designed to make me look bad. And I know that deep down, you're probably enjoying every fucking minute of this. The other panelists were now visibly trying to disappear into their seats. One of them attempted to speak. Perhaps we should take a commercial break, and... No, Ruth interrupted, her voice now carrying the full weight of her authority. We are not taking a break. Meghan, I have been in this industry for decades, and I have interviewed hundreds of guests with grace, fairness, and professionalism. I have never, ever, had anyone sit in that chair and attack me personally the way you just have. Well, maybe that's because no one else has had to deal with the kind of systematic harassment that I've faced. Meghan retorted. Maybe everyone else was just happy to play along with your little games. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend that what you do is journalism when it's really just glorified gossip mongering. Ruth's voice was shaking now. Not with fear, but with fury. How dare you? How absolutely dare you come into my studio, accept our invitation to appear on our program, and then turn around and attack everything we stand for? This is not harassment, Meghan. This is accountability. Accountability? Meghan laughed bitterly. Ruth, when was the last time you held the rest of the royal family accountable for anything? When was the last time you asked the hard questions about anyone else? When was the last time you demanded accountability from people who actually have power, instead of just targeting the ones who've already been pushed out? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Ruth felt every eye in the studio on her, waiting to see how she would respond to what was essentially an accusation that she was a hypocrite and a bully. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was ice cold. Meghan, you seem to be under the impression that the world owes you something. That because you married into the royal family, you should be immune from any kind of scrutiny or criticism. But that's not how this works. When you put yourself in the public eye, when you make public statements and take public positions, you open yourself up to public discussion. Public discussion is one thing, Meghan spat. What you people do is character assassination. There's a difference between asking legitimate questions and creating narratives designed to destroy someone's reputation. And you know exactly which one you've been doing. Ruth could feel her control slipping, but she wasn't about to back down now. What I know is that you're sitting in that chair making wild accusations without a shred of evidence to back them up. What I know is that you're attacking the integrity of everyone in this room based on nothing more than your own paranoia and victim complex. The words hit Meghan like a physical blow. Her face went white, then red, then white again. Victim complex? She repeated, her voice dangerously quiet. Did you just say I have a victim complex? Ruth realized she might have gone too far, but it was too late to take it back now. I said what I said, Meghan, and I stand by it. You fucking bitch, Meghan hissed, her voice barely above a whisper but somehow audible throughout the entire studio. You absolute fucking bitch. You sit there in your comfortable chair, in your comfortable life, and you have the audacity to tell me that my experiences of racism and harassment are just a victim complex? The studio had gone completely silent. Even the camera operators had stopped moving. Everyone present knew they were witnessing something unprecedented, something that would be talked about for years to come. Ruth, despite her shock at being called such names on live television, found her voice. Meghan, you need to apologize right now, or this interview is over. Apologize? Meghan laughed, but there was hysteria in it now. I'm not apologizing for shit, Ruth. You want to know what I think? I think you're exactly like all the rest of them. I think you invited me here hoping I'd break down or say something you could use against me. I think you're a small, petty woman who gets her kicks from tearing down people who are actually trying to make a difference in the world. Ruth was trembling with rage now. That is it, security. But Meghan wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. And what happened next would ensure that this moment lived in television infamy forever. Security? Meghan stood up fully now, her voice reaching a crescendo that could probably be heard in the next building. You're calling security on me? For what? For telling the truth? For refusing to sit here and let you tear me apart like you've been doing for years? Ruth, still standing, pointed toward the studio doors. You need to leave. Now. This behavior is completely unacceptable, and I will not tolerate it for one more second. Unacceptable? Meghan's laugh was almost maniacal now. You want to know what's unacceptable, Ruth? What's unacceptable is the way you and your colleagues have spent years making my life a living hell. What's unacceptable is the way you've twisted every single thing I've ever said or done to fit your nasty little narratives. The security guards were approaching now, but they seemed hesitant to actually intervene in what was clearly a highly volatile situation being broadcast live to millions of viewers. Ruth noticed their hesitation and turned to them with authority. Remove her from the studio immediately, she commanded, her voice carrying the full weight of someone who had been pushed beyond her absolute limit. This interview is over. Don't you fucking dare touch me, Meghan snarled at the approaching security guards before turning back to Ruth with venom in her eyes. You know what, Ruth? You've just proved everything I've been saying. The moment someone challenges you, the moment someone refuses to play your game, you call security and try to have them silenced." Ruth's face was flushed with anger and embarrassment. Never in her entire career had she been spoken to this way, especially not on live television. "You came here as a guest, and you have abused that privilege beyond any reasonable limit. I gave you every opportunity to have a civilized conversation." Civilized conversation? Meghan was practically screaming now. "There's nothing civilized about what you people do. You destroy lives for entertainment. You take people's pain and suffering, and you turn it into fucking content for your morning coffee consumption." One of the other panelists finally found her voice, attempting to de-escalate. "Perhaps we could all just take a moment to—" "Shut up!" Meghan whirled on her. "Just shut the fuck up. You've been sitting there this whole time, watching your colleague attack me, and you've said nothing. You're all complicit in this system. You all profit from it." Ruth had reached her absolute breaking point. "That is enough. I have been in television for over 20 years, and I have never encountered such disgusting behavior from any guest. You are an absolute disgrace." "A disgrace?" Meghan's voice dropped to a dangerously low register. "You want to know what's a disgrace, Ruth? What's a disgrace is sitting there in your position of power and using it to bully people. What's a disgrace is pretending to be a journalist when you're really just a tabloid hack with a television show." The words hit Ruth like physical blows. Her entire career, her reputation, her integrity, everything she had built over decades was being attacked on live television by someone she had invited onto her show in good faith. Her voice, when she responded, was shaking with barely controlled rage. "Get out," she said quietly, but with such intensity that everyone in the studio could feel it. "Get out of my studio right now." "Oh, I'm leaving," Meghan said, gathering her purse and standing to her full height. "But not because you're telling me to. I'm leaving because I refuse to sit here one more second and be part of this charade. This whole fucking industry is corrupt, and you, Ruth Langsford, are Exhibit A." She turned to face the cameras directly, addressing the viewing audience. "I want everyone watching at home to see this for what it really is. This is how they treat people who refuse to play along with their games. This is how they silence voices that don't fit their narrative." Ruth, absolutely furious that Meghan was now commandeering her show to deliver what amounted to a political speech, stepped forward. "You do not get to hijack this program to spread your conspiracy theories and victim narratives." Meghan spun back around to face her. "Conspiracy theories? Victim narratives? Ruth, you just called security on me for refusing to let you bully me. If that's not silencing someone, I don't know what island. You were removed because you were abusive, disruptive, and completely out of control," Ruth shot back. "This has nothing to do with silencing you and everything to do with maintaining basic standards of decency." "Basic standards of decency?" Meghan laughed one final time. "That's rich coming from someone who makes a living destroying people's reputations. You wouldn't know decency if it bit you on the ass." The security guards finally stepped forward, clearly having received instructions through their earpieces. "Ma'am, we need you to come with us now." Meghan looked at them, then back at Ruth, then at the cameras, one more time. "Fine, I'll leave, but I want everyone to remember this moment. I want them to remember that when someone finally stood up to this system, when someone finally refused to be bullied and manipulated, this is how they responded." She started walking toward the exit, but stopped and turned back one final time. "And Ruth, the next time you want to pretend to be a serious journalist, maybe try asking some real questions, instead of just trying to tear people down for ratings." Ruth, her composure finally completely shattered, couldn't help herself. "Don't you dare lecture me about journalism. You're nothing but a failed actress who married into relevance and then burned every bridge you could find." The words hung in the air like a slap. Meghan's face went white with shock and rage. For a moment, it looked like she might charge back toward Ruth, but instead, she smiled. A cold, calculating smile that was somehow more terrifying than all her screaming had been. "There it is," she said quietly. "There's the real Ruth Langsford. Not the professional broadcaster, not the serious journalist, just another jealous, bitter woman who can't stand to see someone else succeed." With that final devastating blow, she turned and walked out of the studio. her heels clicking against the floor in the suddenly silent space. The security guards followed her, but she didn't need escorting anymore. She was leaving on her own terms. Ruth stood there for a moment, breathing heavily, trying to process what had just happened. The cameras were still rolling, capturing every moment of her humiliation and fury. She looked at her co-panelists, who were staring at her with a mixture of shock and sympathy. Then at the studio audience, who were completely silent, unsure whether to applaud or run for the exits. Finally, she looked directly into the camera and, with as much dignity as she could muster, said, "We'll be right back after this commercial break." But everyone in that studio knew that after what they had just witnessed, nothing would ever be quite the same again. The confrontation between Ruth Langsford and Meghan Markle had just become the most explosive moment in daytime television history, and the repercussions would be felt for months to come.